Welcome to A Time for Change. I'm Alexis Christoforous here with Marquise Francis. The business world is buzzing today about Larry Fink's annual letter, which was released last night. In it, the head of BlackRock defends his ongoing focus on environmental, social, and governance issues, saying, quote, stakeholder capitalism is not about politics. It is not woke. It is capitalism. Well, today we are going to look at that same push for stakeholder capitalism, one at a large multinational company and at business schools.
Let's start there with business schools, where there's been a revolution happening on campus all across the country with a new laser focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Schools like Harvard and Wharton hiring new chiefs of diversity and inclusion, or Emory's Goizueta Business School offering its first ever concentration on DE&I. This week, Emory is also hosting a racial justice case competition in the honor of the late congressman and civil rights activist John Lewis, who famously challenged people to get in what he called good trouble. Here's a quick look.
As young people, you must understand that there are forces that want to take us back to another period. But you must say that we're not going back. We made too much progress and we're going forward. There may be some setbacks, some delays, some disappointment, but you must never, ever give up.
Those words and that spirit are at the heart of the John R. Lewis Racial Justice Case Competition at Emory University's Goizueta Business School. The student-led program was started after the murder of George Floyd and the death of civil rights icon John Lewis, who spent 18 years in Congress representing the Georgia district that includes Atlanta, home to Emory. The competition is now in its second year. This year, students from more than 40 universities from around the country have applied to work with companies on specific issues of racial inequality, like helping vaccine maker Moderna design a program to boost diversity from entry to executive level, or working with Accenture to find ways to protect communities of color from digital predatory marketing. Winners of the competition receive monetary prizes up to $20,000, half to keep and half to donate to an organization of their choice that advances racial justice.
Let's bring in the founder of the John R. Lewis Racial Justice Competition, Willie Sullivan, Goizueta MBA class of 2021, plus current Goizueta student Jasmine Burton, who's co-director of the competition this year. So thank you both for joining me. Willie, I want to start with you. Because you were a student 2 years ago when you dreamt up this competition, and now you're at Deloitte. So now that you're in the real world, how do you see this competition? Do you see it as a driver of real change, or do you see it more as an idealistic academic exercise?
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that wonderful question. I would say that being in the quote, real world has opened my eyes to how important an initiative like this actually is. Many of the questions that the students are trying to answer for these major corporations are truly the kind of questions that they're trying to get answers to on the ground. I see that here at Deloitte where I work, and also because we're in professional services, thinking about other clients that we have, trying to truly understand how to make a real difference in the areas of diversity and specifically in the areas of equity and inclusion, which is where those conversations have really moved into. Getting people in the door is one thing, but getting people to feel included and feel as if they have an equitable place is where this conversation is going. And I think the competition is really hitting on that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I appreciate that point. It's one thing getting people in, but that equity oftentimes is seen through the money. So obviously this year, Yahoo Finance is an official media partner in the competition. But Willie, sticking with you with one more follow-up, what are the other brands signed on to this competition, and what does their involvement actually look like?
Yeah, so whenever we came up with the idea, when we really, the original idea was to make it a lot broader about solving systemic problems around race and racism, but we really zeroed in on corporations because corporations were coming out and saying that they wanted to have a seat at the table and trying to deal with systemic racism and racial inequality and racial equity. And so the sponsors, both last year's sponsors as well as these, they are engaging, people within their companies are engaging with the students to say, this is a problem that we have. For example, last year, a partner had a problem of wanting to understand, as a multinational technology company, how can we play a role as in racial equity? What does that even look like for us? We've dedicated this amount of money. We said we were going to give to this cause, but we don't know how to spend it. So that's really that's how the relationship with the companies is working. And it's really exciting to see that work come to life.
Yeah. And we just saw a moment ago some of those companies that are sponsors, UPS, Accenture, IBM on the screen. Jasmine, turning to you, as co-director this year, you signed up some also big companies. So what are the problems they're looking to try to solve?
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Really grateful for this time and space to amplify the power of using business as a force for good, particularly in the fight for racial justice. As Willie mentioned, so we have MBA programs and organizations across the country that have been working to address challenges in industries like consulting, the food and beverage space, healthcare, technology, transportation, and logistics. So through case prompts that each of the managing teams within each of the co-organizing schools, as noted on the screen, we have Yale, Rice, Emory, as well as Cornell and Howard as well, who've all worked together with these corporations to create meaningful problem statements that these finalists have been working over the past few weeks to research and really create meaningful solutions and recommendations for these companies. So we're really excited to see them present their recommendations based off of this intentional research later this week.
And Jasmine, do you mind sharing just a bit more insight on what these recommendations look like? Right now, they seem a bit far-fetched. Maybe not this year's, and I know there's some finals, but maybe some examples of last year. What are these cases? What do they actually look like?
Sure. So I think there's a number of different ways that these recommendations can come to light, whether that is kind of looking within the organization, looking at kind of how corporations are creating equitable and inclusive opportunities within their workforce, within their hiring, in their pipelines for development, but then also externally, the impact that the corporations are making sort of beyond that. Last year, in the inaugural year, there was an opportunity for some MBA students to actually move into an internship opportunity to actually pursue some of the work that they had recommended for their corporate sponsors. And so basically it can come in different forms, and it's actually really great to see that, there are MBA students, there are undergrad students, there's also students from across different disciplines that are applied and are interested in participating in the competition at large, so that it is a really interdisciplinary solution. So it can look like a lot of different things. Last year, we got to see the opportunity of an internship, a job opportunity emerging from the competition. And hopefully we're going to see some similar long-term sustainable actions to bring these solutions to light this year as well.
Job sounds like a great winning recipe. Willie, coming back to you, now that you are working, as I mentioned earlier, and you're actually on the ground floor of these companies, I'm curious, what are some of the challenges you're seeing on a day-to-day basis, right? We talked a little bit about that equity portion, but we also know countries around the world are dealing with these quote unquote challenges, right? And I think from a very simplistic standpoint, it's like hire more people of color. But obviously these challenges are a bit more nuanced. So what are you seeing on the ground floor as how to correct some of these challenges, but the challenges themselves?
Yeah, I think one of the main challenges continues to be how to make the business case for diversity or equity or inclusion. To be really specific, for example, we're dealing with the Great Resignation at this time. We're dealing with, labor shortages all across the economy. And one of the ways to address that, address things like, for example, an airline pilot shortage, or like in this case competition, something that the students will be looking at is a shortage of truck drivers in the logistics industry. Those things looked at through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion can have massive implications if people only were to look at those, what are seen as more core business issues, through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. If we have a shortage of airline pilots and we know that the majority of airline pilots are the same race and the same gender, perhaps one way we can do that is to expand who we are looking at for pilots and training and all of those different aspects, which is what I think is happening on the ground floor to solve some of the world's largest core business problems.
Yeah, a lot of great work happening on the ground and a lot of great work ahead. Like I mentioned, Yahoo Finance is the official media partner of the competition, and you can watch that competition live on Friday on Yahoo Finance's YouTube channel. It starts streaming at 1 p.m. Eastern. And Willie, Sullivan, and Jasmine Burton of Emory's John R. Lewis Racial Justice Case Competition, thank you both for joining us this afternoon. Coming up, find out what old candy company is ushering in new ways of business tailored around DE&I. That and more after the break.
The Hershey Company is more than a century old, but regularly listed at the forefront of diversity, equity, and inclusion. In fact, Forbes ranked it #1 in its inaugural list of the world's top companies for women. It also got accolades for being a top company for Latino executives and LGBTQ+ workers. I recently spoke with Alicia Petross, Hershey's chief diversity officer, about the company's ongoing efforts, which she says trace all the way back to Hershey's founder.
Milton S. Hershey founded our company in 1894, and he is known as a confectioner, a philanthropist, and an innovator. And today we believe in our founders' understanding that all people deserve to be treated fairly. So, as such, DEI has always been a core part of our enterprise strategies. And we believe a dynamic, diverse workforce is key to us in meeting the needs of our diverse consumers around the globe. So, Alexis, while we're proud of our legacy and of our progress, we know that we can and must do more.
And I want to talk about the must do more part, because Hershey was voted top female friendly company in the world, according to Forbes. But I'm wondering if, and I also just want to show some statistics here, 48% gender diversity around the world, more than 30% of global leaders within Hershey are women, and your board of directors now 42% gender diversity there. These are enviable numbers for lots of companies, but have you discovered any equity gaps that are maybe more difficult to tackle than others? Are there parts of the business that you think still have, room for progress?
Yeah, so we have a holistic enterprise strategy that we call the Pathways Project. And the goals and the commitments that we're focused on, Alexis, are equally important as how we are working to make notable and measurable progress. So prior to 2020, DEI was always at the forefront of our business agendas, and clearly it's been rooted in everything that we do back to the days of our founder. However, after the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, we realized that we had a responsibility to do more. So we decided to pause, really look inward, take a hard look in the mirror, and then work with our employees. And so through listening sessions, we developed the Pathways Project. And this is our 5-year plan to make our company even more diverse and inclusive. We're really focused on 3 pillars. We're focused on joining the organization. So here it's about expanding talent pools, new practices of 50% diverse slates for candidates and interviewers, as well as increasing the diversity of suppliers within our supply chain. When we're focused on growing careers and experiences, particularly of Black and Brown talent, here we're taking a unique focus on early in-career individuals. And what we know to be true is that the more commercial acumen and skill building individuals are exposed to, the faster their careers can flourish. And one of the other things we're also focusing on is expanding unconscious bias awareness. And so we have required training for everyone in the company, because we know that when we build these skills, we're able to improve our culture and our business results. And when it comes to reaching out, which is the 3rd pillar of the Pathways Project, here we're focusing on showing up to advance equity in new ways with our consumers and communities at large. And so that pillar involves initiatives like working with key partners such as the Thurgood Marshall College Fund on first ever endowment programs And so we funded an endowment at $3 million, and this will really be a big benefit for diverse students that are studying food sciences. Now, within these major planks, we have identified some areas where we'd like to see stronger representation. So we are keenly focused, Alexis, on continuing to advance the careers of women, of Blacks, of Latinx, and Asian individuals. Now, in truth, our focus on diversity and inclusion expands many different areas. These are ones that we're highly focused on because we know that they're going to make us more representative and we'll be better able to sustain our business and meet our business needs.
So I know that one of the goals here is a commitment to equal pay at Hershey. Can you tell me about some of the progress you've made there and what else do you think still needs to be done?
Yeah, we are incredibly proud that today we pay women and people of color at the aggregate $1 for $1 compared to male counterparts. In 2020, we reached gender pay equity for U.S. salaried women, and early in 2021, we achieved the same aggregate pay equity for people of color working in U.S. salaried roles. But we're not done. We have plans by 2025 to continue to reach pay equity across all verticals and geographies in our organization. And Alexis, we are focused on attaining global pay equity by 2025 in a role-by-role comparison.
Now, as someone who has really dedicated her career to DEI in the corporate world, I'm wondering how you personally have seen the conversation shift around its value. I mean, has getting buy-in from stakeholders become a little less challenging as time's gone on?
You know, today I think there's a true understanding that diversity, innovation really fuel businesses. And I know for us here at Hershey, it's really rooted in our values because without diversity and inclusion, we can't be open to possibilities. We certainly can't make a difference. We definitely cannot be all together, and we cannot deliver excellent business results. What I have seen that has changed is the willingness to have really open, vulnerable, and transformative conversations, particularly conversations on race. And Alexis, I'm sure you hear from many companies, these are tough, touchy conversations to have. And I'm really proud of how our organization has met this head on. Because today we have a lot of business challenges, and being real helps us meet and sustain our business. And so if we're able to have these conversations in a way that nourishes and enriches our workforce while stimulating innovation and creativity within our commercial business, I think that's a win-win. So I think our company is seeing that, and I know many other organizations are seeing that as well.
Now, when Michelle Buck was named CEO of Hershey back in 2017, we had 6.4% of Fortune 500 CEOs that were women. And that number has risen to 8.2% in the 5 years since. So when do you think we're really going to see a material difference there in that gender gap at the highest C-suite?
Yeah, I think that's something that we continue to aspire for. Michelle Buck is an amazing CEO and chairperson of our board of directors. And we really believe that there are more women out there like her who can be doing the same thing. Again, this is why we're focused on early in career and mid-career development so that we're providing commercial opportunities and building commercial skills so that our career plans can then take over and we have many women that we can see a bright future for in senior leadership roles. So I think we're seeing a trend that is going to continue.
Alicia, other companies looking at what Hershey's doing and wondering how they can do it themselves, how perhaps Hershey can maybe be a blueprint for other companies looking to create similar change across their organizations. What would sort of the top thing or bit of advice that you could offer be to those companies?
Yeah, Alexis, I think that's a great question. You know, one thing that we really decided to do when we reset our enterprise DEI strategy, or the Pathways Project, is we realized that we really needed to be all in on this topic. And so we clearly understand the connection to business and sustainability and culture when we focus on this. This topic is an executive committee big rock. And so it means we have frequent conversations and we take a look at our progress. I think it's important that you set measurable aspirational goals, as we have done. I think the linkage of those goals to executive committee compensation is also important. And I think being able to have really real open questions about barriers and opportunities is really important. One thing that I'm truly proud of is how we've embraced everyone in our organization around the goals of advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it was really that co-creation with hundreds of employees that created the Pathways Project. And I believe that's why we're seeing such progress, because we have a lot of people that are working at this for all of the right reasons.
And that was Alicia Petross, Hershey's Chief Diversity Officer. Still ahead, more on that Larry Fink letter that's got everyone talking. Welcome back to A Time for Change. One more note about Larry Fink's annual letter, which we mentioned at the top of the program. The chairman and CEO of BlackRock says that the pandemic shone a light on issues like racial equality, childcare, and mental health, and says these themes are now, as he puts it, center stage for CEOs. And that's it for this week's A Time for Change. For Marquise Francis, I'm Alexis Christoforous. Thanks so much